Have you ever sensed there's something more? This isn't a rhetorical question. It's real, visceral, something pulsing within you like a persistent whisper you cannot silence, no matter how hard you've tried. Perhaps you're weary of the same answers. Maybe you stopped attending church years ago because the words felt hollow, the rituals mechanical, the songs repetitive. Or perhaps you still go, sitting in the same pew every Sunday, singing the same hymns, listening to the same sermons, and leaving exactly as you arrived, empty. Not because you lack faith, but because you know in the depths of your being that there must be something more. Something they're not telling you. Something that got lost along the way. Something Jesus taught, but that over time became buried under layers upon layers of tradition, interpretation, control. What you're experiencing isn't rebellion. It's spiritual hunger. It's that sensation of standing before a doorway almost no one perceives. A doorway that exists in no temple. A doorway requiring no external ritual, no one's approval, no membership, no position. A doorway that opens only from within. And here's the strangest part. A piece of you always knew that doorway existed. Perhaps when you were a child standing silent beneath the stars. Perhaps in a moment of loss when you felt a presence you couldn't explain. Perhaps in those seconds between sleep and waking, when something more real than ordinary life touched your awareness. Those weren't random moments. They were callings. Jesus spoke of that doorway, but his teaching wasn't designed to be explained in 30-minute sermons. It was designed to be lived, experienced, felt in the silence of the heart. If you're here right now, if something brought you to this video, it's not coincidence. There's a part of you that recognizes truth when it hears it. Not because someone explains it, but because it resonates with something already living within you. Today we're going to explore that gateway. The gateway Jesus called the kingdom, the same one mystics throughout the ages have crossed, the one available to you in this precise instant. But it opens only for those who recognize certain signs, and perhaps you've already seen them. Jesus said something almost no one truly hears. We read it, we quote it, we put it on bumper stickers and t-shirts, but we don't feel it, we don't live it, we don't let it transform everything. He said, "The kingdom of God is within you." 4 words that change everything. Is within you. Not will be when you die. Not might be if you're good enough. Not is in heaven, far away, unreachable. Is now within. What if that wasn't a poetic metaphor? What if it was the most literal, most direct, most radical teaching he gave? What if everything that came after, all the theology, all the structure, all the rules, was a way, conscious or unconscious, of avoiding that uncomfortable truth? Because if the kingdom is within you, then you need no intermediaries. If the kingdom is within you, then you are the temple. You are the altar. You are the priest. You are the place where the divine and human meet. And that changes absolutely everything. Jesus didn't come to establish a religion. He came to show you a path requiring no journey to any sacred place, because the most sacred place is within you. A path requiring no ancient languages, because it communicates in the language of the heart. A path requiring not moral perfection, but deep honesty. The early Christians knew this. The Gnostics called it the knowledge of the heart. Not intellectual knowledge, but direct experience of the divine. Contemplative mystics practiced it in silence for centuries, sometimes in hidden monasteries, sometimes in the midst of ordinary life. That path has a name from the most ancient texts, monad. The original unity, the point where everything converges, the place where your soul and the divine are not separated, but united. They've always been united. It's the gateway that opens when you stop seeking God outside, in heaven, in rituals, in external approvals, and begin recognizing Him where He's always been, within you. But here's what no one tells you, what's rarely explained. Not everyone feels the call at the same time. Not because some are better or worse, but because each soul has its moment. Each heart awakens in its season. And if you're here, if something in you vibrates with these words, if you feel that tingling in your chest, that mixture of excitement and recognition, it's because your moment has arrived. The signs are there. They've always been there, like breadcrumbs left by your soul so you could find the way back home. We're going to recognize those signs together. We're going to cross that gateway. We're going to remember what you should never have forgotten, because this isn't new information. It's ancient memory. Before we continue, I need you to know something with absolute clarity. You're not crazy. You're not wrong. You're not alone. And there's nothing broken in you. That emptiness you feel after religious services, that sensation that something's missing, that restlessness making you question whether you're truly experiencing God or just repeating words, all of that is valid. All of that is real. All of that is, in fact, the first sign of awakening. Because here's the truth, Jesus' teaching was simplified over time. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not saying the church lied. I'm saying that when something profound is transmitted through centuries, through cultures, through thousands of people with different levels of understanding, it inevitably gets simplified. It becomes easier to teach, easier to organize, easier to control. And in that process, something was lost. Not the essence, that can never be lost, but the practice. The direct experience. Religion taught you to believe in Jesus, but Jesus taught you to experience what he experienced, and that difference is immense. Believing is a mental act. You can believe and still feel empty. You can believe and still be anxious. You can believe and still feel God is millions of miles away. But experiencing is something completely different. Experiencing is knowing in your body, in your heart, in every cell of your being, that you're not separated from the divine, that you never were, that separation was always an illusion. Jesus didn't ask you to believe in him. He asked you to follow him. And following him means walking the same inner path he walked. It means entering that secret chamber he spoke of in Matthew 6:6. It means closing the door to the external world, the noise, the expectations, the judgments, and meeting the sacred in the silence of your own heart. But over time, that contemplative practice became optional. It became something for monks or mystics, as if it were an advanced path, reserved for a special few. And that simply isn't true. That was the original path. That was the core of everything. When Paul wrote Christ in you, the hope of glory, Colossians 1:27, he wasn't talking about a historical Christ you admire from afar. He was talking about a living presence, internal now, about that divine spark dwelling in you, waiting only to be recognized. That spark is the monad gateway. It's the access point. It's the door that opens when you stop seeking external validation and begin trusting your own inner experience. And this is what I want you to feel right now in this moment. Relief. The problem isn't God. The problem isn't you. The problem is you were taught to search in the wrong place. You don't have to abandon your faith. You don't have to reject Jesus. You don't have to leave anything behind. On the contrary, you're returning to what he truly taught. You're going deeper, not drifting away. Institutional religion has its place. It can accompany, it can console, it can gather. But it cannot do the inner work for you. That work is yours, and it's sacred. If this message resonates deeply with you, if you feel this is what you've been seeking without knowing it, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Here we share this inner journey, this return to Jesus' contemplative teaching, without rigid dogmas, without judgment, only real experience. Join this community of seekers ready to go deeper. Subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss this journey. Now we're going to explore exactly how this gateway works, how to recognize it in your own life, and how to open it. Jesus said, when you pray, enter your secret chamber, shut the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. Read that again, slowly. Enter your secret chamber. That chamber isn't physical. It's not a closet. It's not your bedroom. It's interior. It's that space within you where the world's noise cannot enter. It's your center, your heart, the holy of holies of your own being. But for most of us, that chamber is completely full of thoughts that won't stop, full of worries about the future, full of regrets about the past, full of voices, what your parents said, what your partner expects, what others would think, full of constant mental noise that never ever stops. It's so full that when you try to pray, when you try to meditate, when you try simply to be silent, you find no space, you find no peace, you find only more noise. And so you pray from the noise, you pray from anxiety, you pray asking for things, pleading, negotiating with God as if he were a salesman you need to convince. Meanwhile, God waits in the silence. The monad gateway opens when you learn to empty that inner chamber, not through effort, not fighting your thoughts as if they were enemies, but learning to inhabit yourself in a different way, learning to be present with yourself, learning to breathe consciously, learning to feel your heartbeat, learning to recognize the space between thoughts. This isn't New Age, this isn't Buddhism disguised as Christianity. This is original Christianity, contemplative Christianity, the Christianity practiced by the first desert fathers in the 3rd century. They went to the silence, not because they hated the world, because they wanted to find God without distractions, and they found Him, not as a concept, as a living presence. St. John of the Cross called it the dark night of the soul. That emptying process where everything superficial, everything false, everything you're not truly, falls away. And it hurts, because we're attached to our masks. But on the other side of that night is the most luminous dawn you can imagine. Teresa of Avila wrote about the interior castle with 7 mansions, each mansion deeper than the last, each step closer to union with God. And in the deepest mansion, she said, there are no longer words, no thoughts, only union, only love, only pure presence. They knew something we forgot, that God is not a theological concept. He's a presence, and presence is only found in the present, not in the past carrying guilt, not in the future carrying anxiety, in the now, in this instant, in this breath. When Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," He wasn't talking about His historical person as an object of worship. He was pointing toward that Christic consciousness that dwelt in Him fully, and that also dwells in you potentially. Paul understood this perfectly. That's why he wrote, "I no longer live, but Christ lives in me." Galatians 2:20. He wasn't talking about possession. He was talking about union, about that moment when the small ego dissolves and what remains is pure divine consciousness. That consciousness is the inner Christ, the Logos, the Word made flesh, the light that illuminates every person coming into this world. John 1:9. That light never went out in you. It was only covered by noise, covered by identification with the ego, covered by the idea that you're only this body, only this story, only this name. But there's something more in you, something eternal, something that existed before you were born and will continue existing when this body finishes its journey. Jesus called it the kingdom. Paul called it Christ in you. The mystics call it union with God. The ancient texts call it monad, the original unity. And the gateway to that unity opens when you stop striving to be spiritual and simply are, when you stop searching for God and recognize that God already found you, when you stop trying to arrive somewhere and realize you're already home, when you stop resisting life and surrender to what is. Because here's the great secret, the secret the mystics always knew: you don't have to reach God. You're already in God. You always were. Like the fish in the ocean asking, "Where is the water?" You only have to realize it. And realizing isn't a mental act. You don't get there by thinking more. You get there by being more. Being present, being conscious, being love. That's why Jesus insisted so much on love, not as a moral commandment you must fulfill, as the key that opens the gateway. Because when you truly love, you're not thinking, you're being. When you truly forgive, you're not analyzing, you're releasing. When you truly surrender, you're not resigning, you're trusting. And in those moments, the gateway opens. The kingdom reveals itself, not as something new arriving, as something eternal that was always there. The signs that your heart is ready to cross that gateway are clear. You feel nostalgia for something you cannot name. You feel ordinary life hides something extraordinary. You feel an inner calling that doesn't come from your mind, but from deeper. You feel traditional religious answers are no longer enough. You feel hunger for real experience, not just beliefs. Those aren't signs of rebellion, they're signs of awakening. And awakening always begins with a silent question pulsing in the heart. Is there something more? Jesus answered that question 2,000 years ago. His answer remains alive, remains available, remains waiting for you. Now we're going to feel that answer, not with the mind, with your entire being. Stop, just for a moment. Stop doing. Stop thinking. Just be. Breathe. Don't change your breathing. Just observe it. Feel how air enters, filling your lungs. Feel how it exits, carrying tension away, without forcing anything, without improving anything. Just observing what's already happening. Your body breathes without you having to think about it. Your heart beats without you having to command it. There's an intelligence operating in you that's infinitely wiser than your mind. And perhaps, while you're listening to this right now, something in your body is already responding. Perhaps you feel a subtle relief in your chest, or warmth in your center, or simply a stillness that wasn't there a minute ago. That's not imagination. That's the gateway beginning to open. Not with dramatic lights, not with mystical visions, with something much simpler and much more profound. Presence, awareness, life flowing through you. Your body knows things your mind forgot long ago. Your heart has an intelligence that doesn't depend on words, logic, analysis. And when you begin inhabiting your body consciously, when you begin feeling instead of just thinking, everything changes. Jesus healed through touch, not with words, with contact. He touched the blind man's eyes. He touched the leper's skin. He touched because he knew something fundamental, that the divine is not abstract. It's tangible. It lives in the body. It lives in matter. It lives in this present moment. That's why authentic Christian contemplation always included the body. It wasn't only mental, only intellectual, only theoretical. It was embodied prayer, prayer of the whole being. The mystics spoke of feeling God in the heart, and they didn't say it as metaphor. They said it as literal experience, a warmth, a presence, a peace surpassing all understanding, because it doesn't come from the mind, it comes from deeper. And that's available to you right now, not tomorrow, not when you're holier, not when you've meditated for years. Now, because you were created for this. Your body was designed to be a living temple, not an empty temple waiting for God to visit. An inhabited temple where God already lives, where God already breathes, where God already beats in every pulsation of your heart. When Jesus said, "The kingdom is within you," he was pointing literally toward your interior, toward your center, toward that space in your chest where the heart lives. Not only the physical organ, that energetic center, that point of consciousness that spiritual traditions throughout the ages recognized. Hindus call it anahata. Sufis speak of the spiritual heart. Christian mystics call it the praying heart. It's the same place, the same gateway. Close your eyes for a moment if you can. If you're driving or can't close your eyes, simply soften your gaze. Bring your attention to your heart. Don't think about it, feel it. It's there beating, sustaining your life without you having to do anything. It simply beats. It simply is. Breathe toward that space, as if you could breathe directly into your heart, and ask yourself without words, without expecting a verbal answer, what is real? Perhaps you won't receive words. Perhaps you'll only feel a stillness, a presence, a nameless certainty. That's the inner Christ, not a theological idea, a living presence, breathing in you, being in you, loving through you. And the more time you spend in that presence, the more the gateway opens, the more you recognize you were never alone, that you were never separated, that you were always sustained, loved, inhabited by something infinitely greater and more loving than your mind can comprehend. The signs you're entering through that gateway are subtle but undeniable. You feel more peace amid chaos. You feel more love without apparent reason. You feel life has meaning, even when you don't understand what's happening. You feel, above all, that you're home, in yourself, in God, in the eternal now. This isn't escapism. It's the most complete awakening to reality, because reality isn't only what you see with your eyes, it's also what you feel with your heart, and your heart knows the way back home. I'd love to know from what part of the world you're listening to me right now. Write in the comments your city or country. I imagine this light extending across the entire planet, connecting hearts seeking the same thing, feeling the same thing, recognizing this ancient truth. Tell me, where are you listening from? What time is it where you are? I love knowing we're not alone on this path. Now we're going to ground all of this. We're going to see you're not inventing anything, that this is ancient, that this is true, that this has deep roots in scripture and contemplative tradition. When Jesus spoke of the inner kingdom, he wasn't inventing something new. He was remembering something very, very ancient, something Hebrew prophets intuited, something wise ones from all traditions always knew, that the divine is not separated from you, it's in you, as you, with you. The Gospel of Thomas, one of the most ancient Christian texts we have, possibly written in the 1st century, records these words of Jesus. The kingdom is within you and outside you. When you know yourselves, you will be known, and you will understand that you are children of the living Father. Read that again. When you know yourselves, knowing yourself. That was always the key. Not learning more theology, not memorizing more verses, not attending more services, knowing yourself. Because when you truly know yourself, not your superficial personality, not your psychological story, but your essence, you discover that at the bottom of your being, there's no separation. There's unity, there's monad, there's God. Paul understood this with crystal clarity. That's why he wrote words many read, but few truly absorb. Do you not know that you are God's temple, and that God's Spirit dwells in you? 1 Corinthians 3:16. He didn't say the temple is in Jerusalem. He didn't say the temple is in Rome. He didn't say you need to go to any sacred place. He said you are the temple, your body, your being, your consciousness. And then he added something even more radical. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Galatians 2:20. Think about that. Paul, the great apostle, the great teacher, says it's no longer he who lives, that Christ lives in him, not as possession, as union, as that state of consciousness where the small self dissolves and what remains is pure divine presence. That's monad. That's the gateway. That's what happens when you cross from ego to essence. Peter also knew it. That's why he wrote, "You are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession." 1 Peter 2:9. Royal priesthood, each of you, not only the ordained, not only those with titles, everyone, because everyone has direct access to the Holy of Holies. Everyone can enter the secret chamber. Everyone can cross the gateway. This was the original teaching of primitive Christianity. But over time, when Christianity became institutionalized in the 4th century under Constantine, when organization and hierarchy and control were needed, something was simplified. Direct experience became optional. External ritual became central. External authority replaced interior authority, and the gateway was forgotten. Not eliminated, because you can't eliminate something that's part of your nature, but rarely explained, frequently ignored, generally reserved for mystics, as if it were an advanced path for a special few. But the mystics never forgot it, because they didn't just read about God, they experienced him. Meister Eckhart, the German mystic of the 13th century, said something that scandalized many in his time. The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. There aren't two eyes, there's one, a single consciousness seeing itself, monad. Saint Francis of Assisi didn't just talk about God, he lived in constant union with the sacred. He saw Christ in the leper, in the poor, in the singing bird, in the tree. Because for him everything was a gateway, everything was sacrament, everything revealed the divine. Teresa of Avila described her contemplative journey as an interior castle with 7 mansions, each mansion deeper than the last. And in the most intimate mansion, she said, there are no words, no thoughts, only union, only love, only pure presence. John of the Cross wrote about the dark night of the soul, that painful but necessary process where everything superficial, everything false falls away. But on the other side, he said, is the living flame of love, that union with God so intimate that the soul and God become one. And not only the great mystics, common people, mothers who prayed while kneading bread, farmers who found God in the field, craftsmen who saw the sacred in their work. Brother Lawrence, a 17th century French monk who worked in a monastery kitchen, wrote about the practice of the presence of God. He said he washed dishes with the same devotion with which he received communion in the chapel, because for him everything was prayer, everything was a gateway, everything was sacred. He wasn't special, he was conscious, and that consciousness changed everything. Even modern science, unknowingly, is beginning to touch these ancient truths. Quantum physics discovered that observer and observed aren't separated, that consciousness participates in creating reality, that at the most fundamental level of matter, everything is intertwined, everything is connected, everything is in a certain sense one. Neuroscientists are discovering that contemplative meditation literally changes brain structure, that conscious presence affects brainwave patterns. That states of consciousness mystics described centuries ago can be measured, observed, studied. We're not saying science proves God. We're saying science is discovering what mystics always knew, that reality is much more mysterious, much more interconnected, much more one than it appears at first glance. Monad isn't a new concept. It's the most ancient truth. It's what Jesus taught when he said, I and the Father are one. John 10:30. It's what Paul taught when he said, "In him we live and move and have our being." Acts 17:28. It's what John taught when he said, "God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God in him." 1 John 4:16. Not separation, union. And the gateway to that union isn't in a physical temple. It's in your heart, in your breathing, in your presence, in this moment. The signs you're ready to cross that gateway are these. Superficial answers no longer satisfy you. You can no longer pretend external religion is enough. You can no longer ignore that inner calling constantly whispering, "There's more." And when you recognize those signs, when you stop resisting that calling, the gateway begins to open. Not with fireworks, with stillness, not with dramatic visions, with peace, not with mental certainties, with heart certainty. This confirms what many already felt without being able to express it. This gives words to what your soul always knew. And this invites you not to believe something new, but to experience something eternal. Now we're going to do something together. We're going to cross that gateway, even if just for a moment. We're going to experience, not just talk. We're going to do something together now. Something simple but profound. Something Jesus himself practiced in the desert, on the mountain, in those moments alone with the Father. You don't need to prepare. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to be willing. First, find a comfortable position. You can be sitting, standing, even lying down. The posture doesn't matter. What matters is that you feel present in your body, not floating in your mind. If you can, close your eyes. If you're driving or in a situation where you can't close them, simply soften your gaze. Let it rest. Now breathe 3 times, deep, slow, without effort, just letting life flow through you. First breath, inhale, and feel how air fills your chest, your belly, your complete being. Exhale, and feel how your body relaxes, softens, surrenders. Second breath, inhale, receiving life, receiving grace, receiving presence. Exhale, releasing tension, releasing control, releasing fear. Third breath, inhale, with gratitude for this moment, for this body, for this opportunity. Exhale, with confidence in what is, in what comes, in what always was. Good. Now bring your attention to your heart. Don't think about your heart. Feel it. It's there in the center of your chest, beating, sustaining your life second after second, without you having to do anything, without you having to remind it how to function. It simply beats. It simply is. It simply lives. Feel that beat, that pulsation, that sacred rhythm. And while you feel your heart, we're going to repeat together internally with gentleness, without forcing, a phrase that will accompany you from this moment forward. The kingdom is within me. Don't say it only with your mind. Feel it. Let those words descend from your head, pass through your throat, reach your heart, anchor in your body. The kingdom is within me. You're not trying to create something. You're recognizing something that was always true. You're remembering what you forgot. You're awakening to what was always sleeping within you. The kingdom is within me. Perhaps you'll feel warmth in your chest. Perhaps you'll feel peace. Perhaps you'll feel emotion. Perhaps you won't feel anything extraordinary, just simple stillness. Everything is fine. There's no correct way to feel this. There's only honesty. Now breathe with that phrase. Make it part of your breathing. Let it become as natural as inhaling and exhaling. Inhale, the kingdom, exhale, is within me. 5 more times, slow, conscious, present, without hurry. 1, inhale the kingdom and exhale and is within me. 2, inhale the kingdom and exhale and is within me. 3, inhale the kingdom, exhale and is within me. 4, inhale the kingdom, exhale, how is within me. 5, inhale the kingdom, exhale, is within me. Beautiful. Now release the words. Simply remain in silence, without trying to feel anything, without seeking an experience, just breathing, just being, just present. This is the gateway, this moment, this stillness, this presence that needs no words, needs no proof, that simply is. It's not spectacular. It's not dramatic. There are no celestial lights or angel choirs, but it's real. More real than any thought, more real than any concept, more real than any belief. When Jesus said, "Watch and pray," he was referring to this, to being awake, to being present, to not getting lost in the past with its guilt or in the future with its anxiety, to inhabiting this moment with your entire being. And you can return to this space whenever you want, at any moment of the day, in the middle of traffic, in the middle of an argument, in the middle of stress. You only need 3 things. Breathe consciously. Bring your attention to your heart. Remember, the kingdom is within me. This is your mantra phrase, your anchor, your gateway. Don't use it as religious obligation. Use it as spiritual gift, as a reminder of who you truly are, of where you live, of who sustains you. Now slowly, gently open your eyes, return to the world, but carry with you that presence, that silence, that quiet certainty that you're not alone, that you never were, that the kingdom was always within you, waiting to be recognized. The gateway opened, even if just a crack, and now you know how to return to it. We're going to talk about who else knew this path, about who else crossed this gateway throughout history. So you know without any doubt that you're not inventing anything, that this is ancient, that this is real, that this is true. You're not alone on this path. You never were. Throughout 20 centuries, men and women from all cultures, all epochs, all social conditions found this same gateway. They crossed it, they lived it, they breathed it, and they left testimony so others could follow. The Desert Fathers in the 3rd and 4th centuries left the cities and went to the silence of the Egyptian desert, not from hatred of the world, from love of God. They sought what they called pure prayer, prayer without words, without images, without petitions, only presence, only attention, only love, and they found God alive in that silence, not as a concept, as direct experience. Anthony the Great spent years in a cave, not suffering, finding that union we all long for but few dare to seek. Teresa of Avila, in the 16th century, a Spanish Carmelite nun, described her interior journey as a castle with 7 mansions. She said, "The soul is like a diamond castle, and the deeper you enter, the closer you are to God. In the first mansions, there's still noise, still distraction, but in the 7th mansion, the deepest, there's no longer separation, only union, only spiritual marriage, as she called it, only love that consumes everything." Teresa wasn't perfect. She had a bad temper, she got frustrated, she got distracted, but she found the gateway, and she crossed it. John of the Cross, her spiritual companion, wrote about the dark night of the soul. It sounds terrifying, and sometimes it is, because it's the process where everything superficial, everything false, everything you're not truly, falls away. Your mental certainties crumble, your emotional consolations disappear, your external supports break, and in that darkness, when you can no longer lean on anything external, you discover what was always there, the internal presence, the indestructible light, the Christ who never abandoned you. On the other side of that night, John said, is the living flame of love, that union with God so intimate, so profound, that soul and God become one in experience. Meister Eckhart, the German mystic of the 13th century, said something that scandalized many. God and I are one. In knowledge, God knows me and I know him. In love, God loves me and I love him. And in that knowledge and that love, there aren't two, there's one. For those words, they almost condemned him for heresy, but he wasn't blaspheming. He was describing what he experienced, and experience is always more dangerous than theory. Francis of Assisi didn't write great theological treatises. He lived the kingdom. He saw Christ in the leper, in the poor, in the singing bird, in the wolf everyone feared. For him, everything was sacrament. Everything was a gateway. Everything revealed the divine, and not only the great saints, common people, people like you. Brother Lawrence, a 17th century French monk, worked in a monastery kitchen. His work was washing dishes, baking bread, cleaning pots. Ordinary work, simple work. But he wrote that he washed dishes with the same devotion with which he received communion in the chapel, because he learned to practice God's presence in every moment, in every breath, in every simple act of daily life. He didn't wait to be in formal prayer. He lived in constant prayer. Julian of Norwich, 14th century English mystic, had a vision where God showed her something the size of a hazelnut in the palm of her hand. She asked what it was. And God answered, "It is all that exists. In that hazelnut was contained all creation. And then God told her the most beautiful words ever written: all shall be well, all shall be well, all manner of things shall be well. Because when you cross the gateway, when you experience that union, when you know God is not separated but intimately present, fear dissolves, anxiety calms, and what remains is trust. These people weren't spiritual superheroes. They were human, with doubts, with fears, with struggles, but they found the gateway, and their life changed. And if they could, you can. This isn't rare. This isn't for canonized saints. This is for everyone who feels the calling, for everyone who can no longer settle for superficial answers, for everyone who knows deep in their heart that there's something more. If you've made it this far, if you're listening to these words right now, it's because you are one of them. Not for being special, because your soul is ready. Because your time arrived. Tell me in the comments, what part of this message reached deepest in you? Was it a particular phrase? Was it the breathing practice? Was it knowing you're not alone on this path? Was it one of the mystics I mentioned? I'd love to know what resonated in your heart. Share in the comments. This way we create a community of seekers who recognize each other. Now we're going to talk about something fundamental: who you are in all of this, what your true identity is, what it means to be one of the chosen who recognize the gateway. If you're here listening to these words, in this precise moment of your life, it's not coincidence, it's not algorithm, it's not chance, it's not randomness. Your soul brought you here because there's something in you that knows, that always knew, that recognizes truth when it hears it, not because someone explains it with perfect logic, but because it resonates with something already living within you, something ancient, something eternal, something real. Not everyone feels this inner calling, and that's okay. Each soul has its time. Each heart awakens in its season. There's no rush in the kingdom. There's no urgency in God, but you do feel it. You've felt it for years, perhaps. That whisper, that restlessness, that certainty that there's something more beyond Sunday sermons and repeated prayers and automatic rituals. That doesn't make you rebellious. It makes you a seeker. And seekers have always been the beating heart of every true spiritual tradition. Jesus said, "Many are called, but few are chosen." Matthew 22:14. For centuries, that phrase was used to create fear, to create exclusion, to create spiritual hierarchies. But that wasn't the meaning. Jesus wasn't saying God chooses some and rejects others. He was saying many hear the call, but few are willing to respond. Few are willing to release the comfort of easy answers. Few are willing to walk toward mystery. Few dare to trust their inner experience more than external authority. But you're here. That means something in you already said yes, already responded, already accepted the invitation. You're part of those Jesus called the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Not because you're perfect, because you're awake, or at least beginning to awaken. Because you're willing to see beyond appearances. Because you're willing to feel beyond words. Because you're willing to be transformed. The Monad Gateway doesn't open for everyone at the same time. Each soul has its moment of spiritual maturity, and this is your moment. Perhaps you spent years searching, reading books, attending conferences, trying different paths, feeling something was always missing. Perhaps you spent years feeling guilt for doubting, feeling there was something wrong with you because traditional religious answers didn't satisfy you. Perhaps you spent years in silence, not daring to say aloud what you felt in your heart, from fear of being judged, from fear of being rejected, from fear of being wrong. But you weren't wrong. You were being called, and now you know. Now you have words for what you always felt. Now you have a path for what you always longed for. Now you have confirmation that you're not crazy, you're not alone, you're not lost. You're finding, you're awakening, you're returning home. And that path doesn't take you far. It takes you inward. It takes you to the kingdom that was always within you, patiently waiting to be recognized. You are temple. You don't go to the temple. You are the temple. You are altar. You don't offer at the altar. You are the altar. You are priest. You don't need a priest. You are the priest of your own soul. You need no one's permission to cross this gateway. You need no external validation. You need no spiritual certificate. You only need three things: honesty, to recognize what you truly feel; presence, to inhabit this moment completely; open heart, to receive what was always waiting for you; And you already have that, because if not, you wouldn't be here. Your presence here in this moment is proof you're ready. Welcome home, seeker. Welcome to the gateway, awakened soul. Welcome to your true identity as son and daughter of the living God, not as theological concept, as lived experience. This is your path, and it's beautiful, and it's only beginning. And now, before you leave, before you return to the world with its noise and its demands, I want to leave you with something. Not with more information, not with more concepts, with a blessing, with a recognition of what just happened between you and these words. Something moved in you. Perhaps it was subtle as a breeze. Perhaps it was deep as an interior earthquake. But something changed, because truth always changes, always transforms, always opens doors that seemed forever closed. The monad gateway is open for you, not as future promise, not as distant goal, as present reality. You don't have to wait to be holier. You don't have to wait to meditate better. You don't have to wait to be perfect. You only have to be present, conscious, alive. And remember, again and again, until it becomes as natural as breathing, the kingdom is within me. That's your truth. That's your inheritance. That's the teaching Jesus came to give you, and that your heart always knew but your mind had forgotten. When you feel lost in chaos, return to your breathing. When you feel alone in the crowd, return to your heart. When you feel separated from God, return to the present. Because God is not in the past with its guilt. God is not in the future with its anxiety. God is here, now, within you. You are loved with a love that doesn't depend on your performance. You are divine with a divinity that doesn't depend on your perfection. You are one with the source, whether you've done everything right or everything wrong. That will never change. No matter what happens in the external world, no matter what others say, no matter how much you doubt sometimes, the gateway is open. It always was, it always will be. Walk with that certainty, live from that sacred place, and you'll see how everything transforms. Not because circumstances magically change, but because you changed, because you crossed the gateway, because you remembered who you are. May the peace of Christ, that peace surpassing all understanding, because it doesn't come from the mind, but from the heart, dwell in you. May the divine presence that always lived in you be recognized, honored, and lived each day. And may you walk in this world knowing you're never, never alone, because the kingdom is always within you. This path continues. There's much more to explore, much more to experience, much more to live, much more to discover about this inner Christ, about this union with the divine, about this contemplative life available to you. The video appearing now on your screen will take you to the next step on this path. It's the natural continuation of what began today. I'll meet you there to continue deepening together in this sacred experience of the inner kingdom. Don't stop now. The gateway opened. Keep walking. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening with your heart. Thank you for daring to cross the gateway. Until very soon, seeker, peace be with you.